There we go. So some notable things about Axum, Ethiopia. It's a very ancient city, ancient town. Used to be part of a ancient empire. The first picture on the left is of the Saint Mary of Zion Church. This is in Axum, obviously. Yearly, there are many celebrations here. People travel from near and far throughout Ethiopia just to get there. And if you guys haven't been from Addis Ababa to Axum, it's about an hour and 37-minute flight. You could go visit the church, and to the right is is a picture of a stele. This was originally erected several meters high in the air. Obviously, it has fall down. It's been through a lot since the Italians came and took one of them and eventually returned it. So we also have a copy of this, a miniature sculpture here in Denver, Colorado, one of our parks that we'll get into. To the bottom left is another church where many of the Christian Orthodox faith believe the Ark of the Covenant lies. And if you're familiar with Queen Sheba and Solomon and some biblical narratives, many people believe the Ark of the Covenant is there, containing the commandments from God to Moses. On the bottom right, there's a picture of Queen of Sheba Pool. In this picture, there seems to be a celebration of what is called Timkat, which is the baptism, John the Baptist, and it's celebrated yearly, not only throughout Ethiopia and other Christian Orthodox countries. And that's that. I see a chat in there. Chuck, according to that picture for the first slide, that picture of that library was taken recently. Jenny can correct me if I'm wrong. That is the current condition. It's mainly intact. I'll go to the next slide. Here are some of the founders of Denver sister cities, Axum. Like Chuck mentioned, it was founded in 1995, so we're 29 years in. Chuck himself used to be a former chair of this committee. He's the one that also encouraged me to partake and get involved, and it's been a blessing since. We have Mayor Wellington Webb, who was the mayor from 1991 to 2003. He worked with the local community here in Denver, along with the Ambassador Daniel Yohannes, who used to be the CEO of U.S. Bank, along with Tsegai Hailu, who by profession is an engineer. He's a current member of the Sister Cities Axum Committee. These are the founders. A lot of knowledge, wisdom, experience. I still communicate frequently with that guy now that he's back in the States and he's doing well. Very encouraged by his story and the foundation that he's laid for people like us to be a part of this. Moving on to the next slide. Here's some pictures of Janet and I at the city of Axum Park. Basically, the sister city connection, it's all about economic ties, economic improvement. Our long-term goal is to have a student exchange program once things get better on the ground there in Tigray. We will get there eventually to have a student exchange program. But the middle picture is Janet and myself standing behind the stele at the city of Axum Park. And then to the right, outside of the restrooms, there's a picture of Janet and I, which reads the Denver Street. There's also a sign in Axum, Ethiopia, that says Denver Street. So it's kind of cool. And we have our Denver Sister Cities International logo as well. Moving on to recent endeavors, we have the annual Ashenda Festival. This is the annual Agenda Festival at the City of Axum Park in partnership with the Tigray community of Colorado. So one really amazing thing that we focus on this committee is getting to know our local community, working with them hand in hand to celebrate, to organize, activism, fundraising, just to list a few things. But this image is basically a celebration of Women's Day in Ethiopia, and they're dancing around, singing, uh, playing on a drum, going around collecting and raising money for various needs. It's really a beautiful, beautiful celebration. And back in Ethiopia, there's thousands, if not millions, of women celebrating their day. Next slide. Again, this is Axum Park. Recently, we worked with some local artists on a mural. So if you can see on the well, you can see on the top left what the basketball court looks like, and this is the design here on the bottom left that the artists rendered for us. And you can see here that the mural was by Jack Price II, and the Park Hill Financial District on the City of Axum Park's basketball courts to commemorate Denver's sister cities. There's a picture of Janet and myself with the local artists. They've done murals like this all throughout Colorado, especially in Denver, and there was a grant that was awarded to us through this program. And it was just a great way to symbolize the relationship of the local Park Hill neighborhood, the greater Denver neighborhood, and Axum in general, exchanging ideas and culture. On the bottom left, the centerpiece of the court is the symbolism of a king, of an African king. And on the basketball courts under the hoop, we have a painted mural of the flag. So I thought it was a nice rendition of that. It was extremely successful, and we had a lot of people come out to support. Moving on to the next slide. So some of our recent endeavors here, of course, building solidarity with our family, friends, and pen pals in Ethiopia and Tigray and Axum, especially. There's been a lot of grief, a lot of sadness due to political instability and war ravaging the area, damaged infrastructure. There's a picture of Janet in the middle, speaking at a rally downtown at the Capitol. There's two flyers. One to the left is for the candlelight vigil to remember and honor those innocent lives that were lost for the war on Tigray, unfortunately. And to the right, there was a documentary that was shown in the theaters here, a local theater, talking about the fight for Tigray. And at the bottom, it reads, in response to the conflict in Tigray, the Axum Committee collaborated with the Tigray community of Colorado by co-sponsoring the documentary Fight for Tigray, speaking at virtual prayer vigils and in-person protests. It's a very powerful image. Moving on next, there's a picture of us at the Capitol building on the steps. Many people from the community here in Colorado. The last census that was taken, it's about 50,000 Ethiopians and Eritreans combined just in Colorado alone. So the number is quite important. In response to the conflicts in Tigray, the Axum Committee collaborated with the Tigray community of Colorado and protested in front of the state capitol. It was a very peaceful protest, organized, and a great way for us to come together to share our grief. Here's a picture about reaching out for support. We have former Mayor Wellington Webb in the top left, speaking at one of our rallies. We also have Joe Nagoose, the bottom left, with Janet, politicking it up, building relationships. We have Jason Crow in the top right, meeting with us virtually. And we also have the new mayor, Mike Johnston, in the bottom right, with the community president, Melita Brahana Meskel of the Tigray community of Colorado, and Getachew Reda, who is the interim president of the Tigray region. He came to Denver. Um, Here on this slide is in regards to the humanitarian efforts. Gebremichael Hospital in Axum was severely damaged and ravaged by other tribes and neighboring countries, invaded to destroy and to loot, and left a mess, unfortunately. And ever since then, not only Axum, but the region in general has been working tirelessly to get things back to operational speed. As you can see, we also have a connection with our boots on the ground in the bottom right picture, giving us updates and pictures on the situation. I was just reading your chat. On to the next slide. So, in regards to the humanitarian efforts here with Sister Cities International, we were able to raise some funds and send it to Axum directly. So they were able to buy some critical medical equipment to get their facilities back up and running. Um, that included over $23,000 in donations for Qiddiss Mariam General Hospital for the medical equipment and supplies. And you can see it here in these pictures. Every little bit helps. Moving on, the relationship between the Peace Corps committee members and the sister cities. We have Chuck, the master of the grill, on the top left. Yearly, we give out hamburgers and hot dogs to some of the youth during the Ashenda festival. So we try to stay cool in the shade, but really we're burning up in the sun, serving the community. There's one of our co-founders, Tsagai Hailu, next to him as well, inspecting his work. On the bottom right, we have David Landis in green shirt, and this was I think it was the end of the year celebration party that we had recently. Here's some more images. We have Andrew Tadros and Janet Lee, Gloria, and Don Curtis in the first image on the left. We've got Gloria and Janet on the bottom right at Axum Park celebrating Shenda. And I think that's my part, Miss Janet.
Yes. Thank you, Senaye. If you would continue doing the clicking for me, I'll tell you next when I'm ready.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is where my journey began. As Chuck mentioned, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Emdeber, Shoa Province, Sabat Karage. I taught 7th grade English at the Haile Selassie First Secondary School. Obviously, most of us taught at a Haile Selassie secondary school, if anything. And my first library that I worked at, I'm a librarian by profession and started working in libraries when I was 14. So was at this particular school library. I often say that if my second year was as good as my first, and many of you would identify with this, I would have stayed a third year. But I went through the overthrow of the government. Haile Selassie was deposed. The Derg came into power. The first year I taught, like I said, 7th grade English. The second year, the students went on strike for the entire second year. And I've got a quote that I'd like to read to you. It's what I often say when I'm doing my presentations. And I'm quoting Maria Thomas, who was a Peace Corps volunteer in Ethiopia before my time. And she was an author. One of her books is Come to Africa and Save Your Marriage. And she and her husband, and I can't remember if he was a senator or a representative from Texas, were killed in a plane crash over Ethiopia. But she said in, I believe, the Atlantic, If you've ever lived in Ethiopia, you never really put it behind you. You follow the news any you can get avidly. You look for people who have just been there. You find Ethiopians on the outside, or they find you. You collect stories. You wait for any chance to go back. And like I said, I think many people would identify for this with this. Senaye, next. So my first time back was in 2006, and I was able to go to a Project Mercy, and I worked for a short time, a couple of weeks, with Marta Gebremichael. It was there that I discovered that there were libraries in Mekelle. As a Peace Corps volunteer, I was not allowed to go north. I had never been to Tigray. Again, it was a wars were going on at the time. But I did help with a school library called Frey Sawat in Mekelle. The mayor of the city was so impressed with what we did that he gave us a building. And so a year later, I got my dates wrong. A year later, in 2009, I took a 5 month sabbatical and helped set up the Senaye Children and Youth Library. In succeeding years, I was able to go back to do cloth book workshops in both Addis Ababa and Mekelle. The young woman on the right, you can see, is a current Peace Corps volunteer, or she was current at that time. Senaye, next. In 2006, I had an opportunity to go back to Ethiopia again for a short trip, and I took that opportunity to go to Adama, which we all know as Nazareth, and it is a partner city with Aurora's sister cities. And I do hope to work there sometime in the future on setting up some libraries there. And when we were doing the cloth book workshop in 2013, I think, the moderator of that program left a whole bunch of materials at the Peace Corps office in Mekelle. And Ben Rurik found them and started doing his own cloth book workshops. He and I connected, and we met at a AFLIA conference. AFLIA stands for the African Library Association. And we met in Yaoundé, Cameroon, and did a poster. And then we met again at the American Library Association in 2017. And I tapped Ben to become part of the Ethiopia Eritrea Returned Peace Corps Volunteer Board. So I wanted to highlight him. But in any of these projects that I was working on, I always tried to meet with the local Peace Corps volunteers and bring them in. And it was a really, really great networking experience. So next. When I was in Axum, I mean, in Mekelle at the Senaye Library, the executive director of the Axumite Heritage Foundation Library checked out what we were doing and thought this would be a great place to, Axum would be, that library would be a great place to look to build for him to make a decision. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So when I was talked into applying for a Fulbright, the suggestion was that I go back to Mekelle. And because of the Denver Sister City relationship, I decided that I'd really like to go to Axum. And I, just blind called the president of Axum University and asked him for a letter of reference. And within 24 hours, I had a letter, which is unheard of that things move that quickly. And so it was, to me, it was as meant to be that I was supposed to go there. So these are the people that I worked with. I love the privacy screen. By my desk, it's a Wayane newspaper, but you can see that's my privacy screen. And this is my crew. These are the guys that I spent so much time with me and who were really lifesavers in making me feel comfortable at the library. Next. So this is a picture of the university library. It's the aftermath. None of the staff were paid for 2 years. None of the staff could enter the campus. It was taken over by the military. Again, they had no electricity, and when the Eritreans went through, primarily the Eritreans went through, they just ransacked everything. They destroyed computers, they stole motherboards. And the picture on the bottom right, the door that's broken into, that's to my office. So I recognize it, and it's to my office. But this is the state that my guys saw when they came into the library. You can imagine how disheartening this would be to see your life work destroyed like this. Next slide. So when I took the Fulbright, I stipulated that I wanted to work at the university because my agreement was with the university, but I also wanted to spend half time working at the Oxumite Heritage Foundation Library. This is the old governor's palace. It also was the Derg torture chamber at one time, but Dr. Tsahai made it into a library, a fully functioning library. And again, it's when he visited me in the McKelly Seganot Library, he was trying to determine would he renovate this building or would he build a new building? And this is the compound. Okay, Senaye next. So this is the building in progress. It's a 4-story, a stone building. And it's like I said, that I watched them lay all the stone that's in the front. But this is the face that you would see that would greet you. Next. This is the great reading room. And again, these are pictures that I took prior to my leaving. It was heavily used. The library was heavily used, about 20,000 books. We had a computer center and a reference center. Up on the 3rd floor, they had an Ethiopian collection, probably another 5,000 books, all related to Ethiopia. And okay, next slide. This is the children's library. This was also in the lower level. And this was funded by a Peace Corps legacy, a legacy grant. So many of you donated money towards the grant. This was Dwight Sullivan and I together had this legacy grant. And his wife, Dwight's wife, helped put the things together. So next slide. And this is the library in use. So you can see the kids, they kind of got crazy when they saw the toys, but they also there's a reading circle over in the back on that first picture. And again, it was heavily used during pre-COVID and pre-conflict. Next slide. Here is the auditorium. This was also really nicely built. Dr. Tsahai brought in auditorium seating, and then had a local upholster everything. And this was an event that was occurred very early on. Because during the conflict, there was no electricity, there was no water, there was no banking, there was no services whatsoever. And because there was no electricity, it disabled the sump pumps. And there's like a moat all the way around the building. And without sump pumps, it flooded. So this is in the lower level. And there was some damage to that, but we had money from the Ethiopia-Eritrea RPCVs, and we were able to send that to contribute towards the restoration of this after the flooding and after the conflict. Next slide. So Dr. Tsahai is very entrepreneurial, and he wants to make everything sustainable. And there's commercial building on the right. The Lion Bank is one of the occupants, and Ethiopian Airlines is the other. Again, nothing was functional during the conflict, but once the electricity was restored about 2 years ago, the Lion Bank came back in. And on the left, you'll see craft stores. And they just signed leases for each of those craft stores. There are probably 8 or 10 of them. And so that gives you an idea of, the forward thinking of Dr. Senaye and with and how to sustain the library after he is no longer able to. Next slide. So before I went to Ethiopia, I met with Bill Graff, who's in Utah. He was in Wilete Soto, so another RPCV connection. He introduced me to a Rachel server. And a Rachel is a server that contains a lot of open access databases, so free databases, including full text textbooks, other kinds of books, Khan Academy, Wikipedia, health databases where there is no doctor, that whole series. So he did come and visit. He donated 15 Chromebooks. I donated 15 Chromebooks. And he sent his assistant, Al-Shanafi, up from Wileta, and Al-Shanafi and I set up the library, or the Chromebook lab. Next slide. And so the this is the lab in use. Like I said, there are 30 of them, 30 Chromebooks. I don't know what possessed me when I was setting this up, but I insisted that went out and purchased, in Addis, I purchased 30 laptop locks. And I don't know why I did it, but I did. And half of them fit. There were two different models of Chromebooks. Half of them fit the Chromebooks, and then half didn't fit the Chromebooks. And during the conflict, the Eritreans came in and stole what they could take. So we were able to keep 15 of those Chromebooks, and they didn't take the Rachel server. So currently, it's set up that we have a server with open access materials, and we have 15 Chromebooks. And unfortunately, the staff are putting the students on a time limit, so they can only use the Chromebook lab for an hour at a time. You've got 30, 40 students who want to use the lab, but only 15 Chromebooks. The Chromebooks are also now 6 years old, and the server is also 6 years old and hasn't been updated. So that's what we need to do, is try to upgrade this particular lab. There's a special request to me to upgrade this lab. So next slide. Prior to my going to Axum for my Fulbright, Michael McCaskey, who was a Peace Corps volunteer in Fiche, contacted me, and he was always brainstorming about this idea or that idea, about what he could do or what he would do. And he spoke with his former students who wanted him to set up labs or set up training, English language specifically training for the students in Fiche. So just before he passed away, he called me and asked me to be part of this committee, which turns into this program called Tenacity Worldwide. And his children, John and Kit McCaskey, are part of the committee, as is Andy Martin, who was in horror as a Peace Corps volunteer and also worked extensively with textbooks in his career here in the U.S. And Bete Demeke, and Bete is the son of Marta Gebremichael from Project Mercy. So I am now working with the son of somebody I met 20 some years ago. And it's been very, very worthwhile. Cindy, this may be a program for the future, trying to get Andy and I and Bete to do a presentation on Tenacity Worldwide. While we were there, while we've been working on this committee, Bete introduced us to Kamara Ethiopia, Kamara Education Ethiopia. And they do something very similar to what World Possible does with the Rachel system. They use a lot of the open access materials. And again, Andy Martin and John and Kit and I are working with them to get the English for Ethiopia materials onto their servers. So it's similar types of materials, but also what I liked about Kamara is that they actually install the equipment and all the wiring, and they're very specific about what kind of wiring they use. They also refresh the image on the computers on an annual basis. So so they they on an annual basis. They upgrade the software and they upgrade the databases on an annual basis. They provide 5 days of training, which I think is very important. And finally, they're environmentally friendly. They will, when the lifespan of the computers is finished, they will be responsible for upgrading the physical equipment. And so I'm really pleased with what they're doing. And this is the system that I've proposed to Dr. Senaye that we will install hopefully this month. We're working on that. So next slide. Again, Maria's quote is very good in the sense that if we don't find the Ethiopians, they find us. And I was asked by some people to work with the International Society for Better Health Access to help set up a Rachel server lab in the refugee camp in Sudan. And as you're all aware, I'm sure, when the Tigray was invaded, over 60,000 people fled Western Tigray into Sudan. And it became very apparent that they really needed to do something with all of the children that were there. So they've set up schools, and I was able to configure the servers and then send them through the International Society for for Better Health Access and put them into place. I also worked with Kindles and set up first language materials, so books, children's books in local languages. Next slide. And with that, I was able to get a $3,000 grant from the American Library Association. I forgot to mention that with the Chromebook Lab, I was able to get a $1,000 award from the American Library Association. So I've been working with Tegest Hailu for a couple of years now on assisting, not doing the work, but assisting in the refugee camp in Sudan. And unfortunately, the refugees are still there. So I think the next slide is my next to last. I want to thank the Peace Corps volunteers for their past support and the current board for allowing us to send funds through them. We would use the same campaign, the Axum Children's Library campaign that is currently up there, or you could send money if you wanted to through Denver Sister Cities Axum Committee. But I couldn't have done half of what I've been doing if it were not for the support of current volunteers when I was there or return Peace Corps volunteers throughout the last 10, 15 years. They've just been so instrumental in everything I've been able to do. And then the final slide is a sobering slide. But this is one of the libraries that in the Tigray region that was destroyed. And 80% of the schools were destroyed, either absolutely destroyed or partially destroyed. So I think Senaye and I are ready for questions. That was a really, really quick. I could have done an entire program on just about any one of these handouts, one of these slides, but we're open for questions. However Chuck wants to do it, either
Yeah,
vocally or through the chat.
yeah. Well, so far in the chat, what we've seen is some clarification of Andy Martin's places of service, uh, talking about having served in both Harar and in Adwa. Um, there was one question about you referenced Janet, a cloth book workshop
Yes.
and getting an understanding that's library nomenclature or library lingo that some of us might not be familiar with.
Okay.
And then
Senaye,
before you,
I think
before
we
you
can go
answer that,
without the slideshow now, Senaye.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Sorry.
before you answer that, I'll just throw out the other questions. I think I sent out your references to Jason Crow and Joe Neguse. For those who are not Coloradans, we're familiar that they are congressmen from the second and sixth congressional districts in Colorado, U.S. House. And for those who don't know, Michael McCaskey, the late Michael McCaskey, it was a Ethiopia Peace Corps volunteer and was part of the ownership family of the Chicago Bears football team. Just so those who may not be familiar with that. So go ahead, Jen, and respond to the question about the cloth book library.
I got a call from a woman. Her name is Ann Pulowski, wanting to do a workshop on cloth books. And stupid me did not Google this woman. And I said, sure, why not? And so she did a workshop in Ethiopia, in Mekelle. And later I realized I should have been bowing to her because she had so many awards. And she set up these workshops when you are working in a language like Amharic or Tigrinya that may or may not have, that's in a different script, but may or may not have typeface. And this could be, before the computers and before some of the more modern things. It was easier to handwrite on a piece of cloth the other characters of the script. And so she set up cloth book workshops and she's gone to I don't know 100 or 120 different countries doing these workshops. Like I said, I should have been bowing to her. I ended up going to Nicaragua just to meet her because she was doing a workshop in Nicaragua, and then we did 2 workshops in Ethiopia. But
So,
essentially, it's just instead of using paper, you use cloth. You're able to write in various characters, and you tell your own original stories. And the importance is it's documented that if you learn your first language well, it's easier to pick up other languages. And so it's important for children to learn Tigrinya or Amerindia or whatever language, Spanish, uh, and they become better English speakers if they know if they're grounded in their first language. So that's
so,
essentially
so
about a
literally
cloth.
these are books handwritten on cloth,
Right.
single copy books,
We
cloth pages rather than paper pages.
yes, they are written on cloth, but we did scan the cloth. And then we used not Photoshop, but some kind of design software, electronically added the script and printed them out. So I have many books there were 2 Peace Corps volunteers in Mekelle who had really phenomenal little books. And we were able to publish them by printing them out and distributing them.
All right. Now the part that probably, from my perspective, didn't uh, get emphasized enough is that you are open for donations to uh, pursue the rebuilding of the Axum Heritage Library. And again, for those who may be not totally familiar, uh, the Axum Heritage Library is a uh, offshoot of the Ethiopian Community Development Council. The president, Dr. Senaye, is from Axum. He created a separate nonprofit was being constructed during her Fulbright time in Axum. ECDC is actually a nationwide organization that has been very active in refugee resettlement. They have a subsidiary here in Denver, and they are contracted agencies through the State Department that do refugee resettlement and refugee orientation. I know here in Denver, they've worked with refugees from all over. Most recently, I think Afghanis and some Syrians and some others who have settled in Denver as a result of conflict. So just to give the rest of our participants here a little background information. The point I want to make is that we are open to your support of the Axum Heritage Library reconstruction and specifically the updating and replacing Chromebooks and the servers and getting that library back in full functioning. Um, so I'm not sure we've had some issues about how to donate with our website. Looks
Cindy
like
and I and Chris and Randy, I tested it by donating uh, using the site, and the money came through. Randy assured me
yeah,
that it would
yeah.
go through.
So um, what is the does somebody have the URL handy that they can put in the
Let me
chat?
see if I
Yep.
can put it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah,
I copied it earlier.
yeah. So this is the uh, the site for the Ethiopian Eritrea Return Peace Corps volunteers. If you get onto the basic site, you can go to donate, and you'll find not only the Axum Library Project, but some of the other fundraising work that we've done to support very specifically the Axum Library Project. For those of you who don't want to do credit card donations, the site includes a mailing address for checks that you could send through the U.S. Postal Service. Our checks go to our treasurer in in Maryland, Randy Marcus. And he's very good. He was my predecessor in Acela. He he left, and I tried to replace him. He was a renowned teacher and had a career as a foreign service officer, uh, well known to our esteemed vice chair of our committee, Leo. Uh, Also, after his Peace Corps service, spent some time in the U.S. Foreign Service. So I think all of us got a flavor of the really exceptional library that is there as a resource that really needs this boost that we hopefully can provide so that it can go back to full function and meet the needs of the students of Axum. Um, I know that there are other rebuilding projects, the supplies for the St. Mary's Hospital. Um, there are projects going on all over Tigray. I believe our group is also involved with a rebuilding of some schools in the Mekelle area, 9 schools and 2 health clinics that were built some years ago. And also, as noted, all of the schools and all the facilities in Tigray suffered some damage, everything from near total to somewhat less than total. So any other questions for, let's see, I see a mention of
We
our,
put the link in the chat. I think the
great,
second one, the most up to date one, Janet.
Yeah, there are two, one to Denver Sister Cities and one to the Peace Corps link as well.
Thank you.
So any other comments, any other questions? I recognize a lot of people.
yeah, I think we're a small enough group. If somebody wants to unmute themselves and ask Jen a question directly, or Senaye. Rick, are you trying to get?
Yeah, can you hear me? I just wanted to know from Janet or Senaye, what,
Unmute yourself there.
can you hear
I
me?
think it's Rick.
I can
Yeah.
hear you, Rick.
I wanted to know what the key factors, what makes the sister city relationship work? Because I've seen some of those that don't work well. So yours seems to be doing better than others. So what are the ingredients?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Janet and I can attest to this. It's communicating and participating locally with the community. It's building, it's relationship building. For example, this committee has been around for 29 years, and we're growing stronger and stronger each year. So partnering with the local nonprofit and other local communities really helps build that relationship. And a lot of other communities kind of miss the mark because it's not always easy, I would say, Rick.
Yeah, thank you.
So there's an initiative that came out of Sister Cities International, and it's called the 505 Initiative, and it's based out of the Africa Summit that was held a year ago in South Africa. And they're hoping to attract 500 African cities or partnerships with the US in 5 years. And we're going to be doing a roundtable on September 26th, just for Ethiopia. So my thought would be, if I would love it if another city like Detroit or Minneapolis or someplace else would also choose Axum as a sister city so that we could work together. But I would also, Adama, which is with Aurora Sister Cities, is it's a thriving one. They're celebrating their 10th anniversary this year. That's Aurora, Colorado. There could be other cities from any one of your cities who might be interested in it. And it usually starts when there's someone really vested in that particular city. Like Daniel Johannes and Senaye were very interested in setting it up in Axum for a variety of personal reasons, I believe. But there could be others. I know in Ethiopia, there's one in Addis Ababa, of course, also Gondar and
I think Bahadar is a sister
Bahardar,
city.
possibly. I'm trying to remember the others. There are
Yeah,
7.
Gondar is a sister city with Corvallis, Oregon. Just one other question coming in the chat. I'm EIFL. Jen
Yeah, that's
has
for me.
noted.
Hi, Janet.
Hi.
What do we know about EIFL? It's access to academic research articles.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
How
know.
it's functioning. Not familiar with that acronym. What it refers to?
I didn't know if Janet was familiar or anything, but
I
couldn't.
can't think off the top of my head what it stands for, but I'm familiar with it. Yes.
Yeah, it's like I just didn't know if they had any opportunity to partner with Eiffel.
There is that possibility. Eiffel grants are hard to get, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. I
Yes.
think we did apply for one, but they're usually pretty hard to get.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try.
Yeah, it stands for Electronic Information for Libraries, and
Yeah.
that's all.
Yeah.
So they do work in Ethiopia. I was just wondering. Thanks for all that you do. Thanks.
Well, Jen was one of the cloth book participants. She arranged I used her terribly. She was the one who arranged the Addis Ababa workshop and then connected me with the McKelly people. And then we set up the McKelly workshops. So that's how you network. And she wrote articles for me when I was the editor of the Herald. We did a Africa, what was the name of it? I'm blanking on it.
I'm not sure.
The Books for Africa. We did a container of Books for Africa together.
Yeah. All right,
That's true.
before we lose our end our hour, couple of quick things before I get Catherine. I see your hand up. Let's make a couple of quick points. We are intending to have another program with I believe he's still the director of Peace Corps Ethiopia, Obi Shaw. He is, whether he's in Addis or back in the States, I'm not sure, but he has agreed to do another presentation, providing an up-to-date perspective. And Catherine, before we run out of time, unmute yourself and go ahead. with your
There
question.
there was also another hand that was raised, Chuck. I think Ham
I
and
didn't
Joanne.
catch. I saw Catherine Bart.
Okay.
Okay.
I excavated, I'm an archaeologist, I excavated at Axum 1993 to 2002. And in the 90s, I was involved with the Axumite Heritage Foundation. I gave a talk to them in Washington, D.C. on excavations. I saw the Heritage Foundation, well, I saw it building in 1991 when it was just had been horribly destroyed. And people had been killed in that building and tortured there. And
Yeah.
then I saw in the Ross's Palace. And then I saw it after the Axumite Heritage Foundation had started restoring it. So I'd just like to say I haven't been in Axum in 20 years now, but I am so impressed by your work there and the facilities that are being provided now for Axumite young people.
Right. That building, that was the foundation building, the governor's palace that you were talking about.
Yes.
Yes, it was destroyed during the Derg period. It was used as a torture chamber during the Derg period. And it was in very, very rough condition before ECDC and the Axumite Heritage Foundation took over. You're correct, totally correct on that. And it's just that whole complex has just been rejuvenated unbelievably.
Yeah.
Thank you
And
for
so-
mentioning that.
So we can support that. Cindy informs me that the link to the Ethiopian Eritrea Return Peace Corps volunteer website has been tested and a successful donation has gone through. So all of you who, whatever you're willing or able, sound like I'm on National Public Radio soliciting for support, but whatever you could do, I'm sure Janet and our friends in Axum. And to get back to Rick's question, I think, there were a couple of us Peace Corps volunteers that were vital to the relationship, but it's reaching out. We have a significant Tigray community in the Denver area, and reaching out and forging those links and bringing people like Senaye to our committee. I think that's been the key to making an effective ongoing effort to create a true sister fraternal relationship between Denver and Axum.
And again, thank you, Cindy, for inviting me, and thank Chris for testing and sending out the emails and getting everybody up to date. I really, really appreciate that.
Good to see everyone. Don and Gloria, I hope you're well. Eddie Bass, hi.
Oh, Jesus.
Fellow Salite, David, all the folks I know and those I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet. Thanks for joining us. Cindy, closing?
I just want to say that the link actually works. I was able to donate. I can't renew my membership on our website, but I can donate. So I guess that's pretty good. So I hope you all have a very pleasant evening, and you're always welcome to join the board meetings, but we will have another event in September.
Absolutely.
And-
It looks like we got one more person that's got a question
Yep.
we missed.
Yes, this has been a very interesting hour, and some people I know who are not in the audience would like it very much. Will the link to the recording be made available?
Yes, it will. I'll try to get it posted this week. I have a couple of things I need to do, but it will be on YouTube, and Chris will send out the link. So absolutely.
So can he send out the link to the recording and to the donation box?
Yeah, yes,
Yes.
of course.
Okay. Well, again, thank you, everybody, for taking the time to visit with us.
Yes, thank you so much. This was wonderful. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you. Thank you, Senaye. I'll see you tomorrow. Leo, thanks
Okay.
for joining us in the middle of the evening in Mallorca.
Okay,
Thank you so
thank you.
Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.